Hello everyone, welcome back to the second video of this series. One thing I can promise to you about this video is that this is going to be one of the best video for all the ASP.NET Core developers. In this video, we will implement the CRUD operations by using the ASP.NET Core. But the best part is that we will not implement them as a POC. We will implement them in such a way that you can use this same logic in your company level project as well. Talking about the technologies, in this video we will use the .NET Core 8, we will be using ASP.NET Core Web API, we will be using the SQL Server for our database, and to interact with the database we will be using the Entity Framework Core, and the best part is that we will be using the MediatR pattern to separate all our layers. And all these things will be implemented by using the clean architecture. We have already implemented the clean architecture by using the ASP.NET Core in the first part of this series. And if you are interested in the source code of this video, then you can get that entire code from my GitHub repository. The link will be given in the description box below. And for the people who are new here, my name is Nitish Kaushik and I am a Microsoft MEP in developer technologies, and I create the content for the software developers. To work on the CRUD operations in this ASP.NET Core application, I will be using SQL Server as a database, and to write my business logic, I will be using the MediatR pattern. And if I talk about the project architecture, then I will be using the clean architecture. And in the previous video of this course, we have already set up our clean architecture. So as of now, these are empty layers. There is nothing inside these layers. In this video, we will set up all these things one by one. If you want to have a look on the repository of this code, then you can navigate to the github.com, and this is the repository URL. You can also find it from the description of this video. So at this place you will see that there are some incremental changes in this code, but if you want to have a look on how can you get the clean architecture code, then you can navigate to these commits. So if you will click here on this commit, then you will notice that this is the main commit, added ASP.NET Core clean architecture layers. So you can click on this one and you will find all these files over here. Now you can take the reference from this place and you can implement your own architecture. If I go back, here you can notice that this is the readme file for this project, and at this place you can find the links to learn more about how can you implement this particular architecture. So this is the link of the video. You can click on this one and you can navigate to that video. Now let's focus on our code. So first of all, we will have to set up the database in this layer, and here we are having a separate layer for the database, which is going to be infrastructure. So all our work that is related to the database, we will write here in this infrastructure layer. Along with this infrastructure, we also have this core layer, and all the entities that we'll use in this SQL server, we will write or define them in this core layer. So first let's start from this place. Here I'm creating a new folder and the name is going to be entities. Inside this one we can create our own entity. So let's add a new item, and here I will define the employee entity. Click on this add button, and as of now this is an empty plain class. Let's use the public class over here. There we go. Now we have to focus on our DB context, and to work with the DB context we will have to add some packages. So first let's right click on this infrastructure project and choose this NuGet packages. Here we are, click on this browse and make sure what package source you are using. There are chances that your company is using their own package manager, so make sure you are using the correct one at this place. Now here we will have to search about the packages. So first I will search about the Entity Framework Core. So this is the main package that we have to use, Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. You can choose the version from this place. So as of now this is the latest and stable version of this Entity Framework Core. If you want to work with the preview version, then you can click on this checkbox and you will get the preview version. So let's click on this install button. And because we will have to work with the migrations as well, so here we have to include couple of more packages. So first one is going to be tools. This one, click on this install button. So these are some base packages that are required to work with the Entity Framework Core. Now based on the database that you want to use, you will have to add some more packages. So in my case, I want to work with the SQL Server. So I will have to use the SQL Server package with Entity Framework Core. So if you are working with Postgres database or the Cosmos database or Mongo database, then based on the database, you can install your own package at this place. Now let's search for the SQL Server. So this is the package Microsoft.entity framework core.sql server. Let's install this one too. And remember, this is the class library project. Still, the startup application is this MyApp.api. So to work with the migrations, we will have to install the design package in this MyApp.api. So here, let's just right click on this one and choose manage NuGet packages. At this place, we will search about this entity framework core.design. If you are not working with the migrations in your project, then there is no need of using these tools and the design package. And here is the package that we have to install. The name is Microsoft.entity framework core.design, and make sure to install it in your startup application. If you do not want to install this package in your startup application, then you will have to make some other changes in your infrastructure. So in that case, you will have to install this design package in your infrastructure layer, and while configuring the DB context, you will have to use the DB context factory so that you can make the changes at the compile time at your local system. So now we are done with all the changes, and here in the infrastructure layer, we will have to add our DB context. So for that, let's add a new folder, and the name of this folder is going to be data. Inside this data folder, let's add a new class. So it is going to be app DB context. You can give any meaningful name over here. So for example, here I'm using this app DB context or application DB context or my app DB context. You can give any meaningful name at this place. Let's add a new class. There we go. So let's make it public, and we have to inherit this class from the DB context class. There we go. This DB context is available under this Microsoft.entity framework core. And while setting up this app DB context, we will have to pass some options. So we can use the DB context options. And here you can pass the name of your DB context class like this. Options. And we have to pass all of them over here like this. Here I am using the primary constructor, and this is how we can write the code by using the primary constructor. Alright, now we have to set some DB sets over here. So for that, let's use public DB set, and as of now we only have one entity in this application, and this is employee entity. Although there is no property, but we will add it in just a bit. So first, let's resolve this namespace, quick actions, and that's the namespace that you want to use. We can remove all other namespaces that are not required. So we can click on this button, remove and sort using, or you can also use this shortcut. There we go. Now there is no use of this DB context class if we will not define it in our dependency injection class. So because we are using some different layers, and we already have one dependency injection class specific to this infrastructure, so we will define a DB context over here. What we can do over here is we can use this services dot add DB context. So that's the name of my DB context class. Let's resolve the namespace. Let's use this SQL server, and here we will have to define the connection string to our database. So here you can notice that this is the connection string that I am using. My server details is this dot. It means I'm working on the local, and this is the name of my database. Trusted connection is true. It means I will be using the Windows authentication, and this is for the certificate, and this is for the multiple active results set is equals to true. Ideally, we should not write our connection string as an hard coded over here. We should get it from the app settings. We will fix this part later in the video. As of now, let's focus on setting up all these things. So we have successfully set up our DB context class in this application. Now we will have to write some extra properties in our employee entity. There we go. So let's add some properties over here. So we are having only these 4 properties. This is the ID, name, email, and the phone number. So let's use this null concept over here because we are getting this warning. And this is a new feature that you can use to avoid this null warning. The DB context class setup is done. Now we can use the migrations to generate our database. If I open my SQL server, then here you will notice if I refresh my changes that there is no database as of now. We can generate this database directly from our migrations. So let's see how to work with that. So make sure your project is in the build state. So if you will just right click on this solution and try to build your application, then make sure it is successfully compiled. The build is successful. Now let's use the migrations, and for that you can click on this tools and then this NuGet package manager and click on this package manager console. So here we are using the Visual Studio. So there are some different commands that are used in the Visual Studio, or if you are using this same concept or you are building this same application in the VS Code, then you will have to use the .NET CLI. Although the concept behind the scene is similar, in both the cases first we will have to generate our migrations and then update the database, but the way we are writing the command is little bit different in both of them. But before that, make sure that here you are using this infrastructure project as the default project. So let's write our command. Here I am writing add migration. You can press the tab button as well. There we go. And here you can define your message, maybe the database in it, right? And just hit the enter button. Let's see what will happen. Here you can notice that we have successfully created our migrations. In this infrastructure project, there is this migration project and we are having this migration at this place. Now we need to update this database. In this step, there is no use of the database. We are only using the code that we have written. So how this is working? So based on the settings that you have defined in your DB context class, this migration will be generated. Now we will generate a database from this code. So how can we do that? For that we need to write another command, which is update database. Hit the enter button. This time you don't have to write any message. So all the pending migrations that you have in your application, those will be applied to the database. It is done. So this time if I will just refresh my changes over here, then you will notice that we have this database. This is test API database and there are two tables. One table is this employees and another one is this EF migrations history. So by using this migrations history, this entity framework code tracks what all migrations we have applied in our database, and based on this the other settings will be applied. And this is the main table that you want to use, that is dbo.employees. So you will notice that all the properties that we have defined in our class are the columns over here. Now let's just create a repository over here, and for that we can simply create one more folder at this place. So let's just use this add and new folder. Let's use the repositories. Let's get one new file over here, add new item, and this is going to be employee repository. And inside this employee repository, we can create all the methods that are required to work with this employee table. So before that, we will have to use the DB context. So here I am using this app DB context, and this is going to be the DB context over here. Let's create some methods over here. So first one is going to be public async get employees. So let's just right click on this one and resolve this namespace. Let's resolve this one as well. So this toList async is coming from this Microsoft.Entity Framework core. So we can use that namespace over here. So let's focus on this get employees. This is the first method that will return all the employees from our database. What we are doing, we are using this public async task IEnumerable of employees entity. So it means we are going to return the IEnumerable of this employee entity, and that's the name of my method. By using this DB context class, I am returning all the employees. There is no filter, nothing is there. Whatever data we have in our employee table, that will be returned over here. Now this is going to be our first method, and first let's implement this one and then we will focus on about the other methods. It is better to create an interface over here, employee repository, and we will generate this interface in our core project. So here if I will just right click and add a new folder with the name maybe interfaces. Let's just add this new interface like this. Make sure it is public because we need to use its reference over here. Now let's resolve this namespace. So right click, quick actions, and that's the namespace that we need to use. Here let's just copy this line and go back to this interface, paste it over here like this. So this part is done. Now we can define our other methods as well at this place. So first let's quickly do that. So let's assume that my next method is going to be get employees by ID, and here I will expect a new ID. So what I have done at this place, this is my public async task employee entity. because this time I will return only one single employee by using the ID. So what I'm doing, db context dot employees dot first or default async. So this is the method that I want to use. If there is a record with this ID, then we will return it, otherwise this will return null over here. And because of that we are getting this warning over here that the value may be null at this place. But let's not worry too much about that. Let's just copy it and paste it again. This time I will add a new method to add a new employee. So add employee async. Okay, and to add a new employee we will use that employee entity model. There we go. And this time here we will have to use this add. What we have to add? This entity. So what we are doing, by using this db context class, first we are adding this entity, and this will be treated as a new entity in this db context because it tracks all the changes. And when we will call this save changes async method, then all the changes that we have made in this db context, those will be synced with the database. So at this line there will be a database call, and this entity will be stored in the database. And because as a primary key here we are using the GUID, so here we will have to set that ID as well over here. So how can we do that? Entity dot ID is equal to GUID dot new ID, and at this place we are using this return entity. So if you are using the numerical auto incremented ID, then you don't have to define anything over here. That ID will be generated automatically by the database. So at this line your ID will be 0, but once you will save the changes over here, then you will get that ID automatically in this entity class. And this is about the incremental numerical number based ID. But here in this case we are using this GUID, so we will have to define our GUID at this place like this. So this is going to be our third method. The fourth method is going to be update the records. To update the records we need two things. First we need which employee do we want to update, and second is what changes do we want to make. So here let's add one more parameter. It is going to be GUID employee ID, and second one is going to be employee entity. So there may be a question in your mind that we already have one ID over here inside this employee entity. Why are we not using that? Well, you can use that, but if you are talking about some REST principles, then it is always a good practice to use this employee ID as a separate parameter, right? There is no performance or functionality difference. This is just the naming convention that we should follow in our application. Okay, so to update the records there are quite a few ways. The first one is that first we can get that record by using this concept. Like this. And what I will do, if employee is not null, then I will make some changes at this place. So this is going to be employee dot name is equals to the entity dot name. So this employee is the existing record in our database. What we are doing, we are updating these properties with the data that we have in this new entity model. So this is something that we will get as an input from our client, and we are updating all these values over here. There we go. Now if employee is not null, then you simply have to use only one command, which is this one, and let's return the updated employee. So this is going to be employee in this case. We can definitely improve this code. So as of now what we are doing, first we are getting the record from the database. So this is first database call, then again we are making the changes and we are using this save changes async method. So this will again hit our database. So here we are using two database calls in this update method. Let's add one more method, which is going to be delete async method. So for that let's just copy maybe this one and paste it again, and this time let's use the delete employee async. And to delete the employee we only need the employee ID. So here we can use that GUID and employee ID. Let's basically use this code, paste it over here, and if employee is not null, so what we will do, db context dot employee dot remove, and that's it. We are going to return the boolean value, and we can use this return. So this method is going to return a number over here, and here we can use this greater than 0. So in this case we are making the changes only with one single employee. So the output of this save changes async method would be 1. It means the operation is successful. So we will return true value. If here we will return the false value, and if there is any problem in the save changes async method, then we will get 0 or some other value. Then again in that case we will get the false value at this place. Now we have to write all these methods in our interface too. So let's just copy this one. So far in this application we have achieved so many things. We have created a clean architecture that you can refer in the first part. We have set up a DB context class, and we have also generated our database. Along with that, we have also generated our employee repository and all the operations that are required to work with the employee, basically the CRUD operations. So CRUD operations means C for create, this is something that we are creating, R for read, so this is for reading purpose, U for update, so this is for the updating purpose, and D for delete. So this is for the delete purpose. So we are having all 4 operations at this place. And so far, if you are enjoying this video, then make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Now let's focus on our MediatR pattern. So the MediatR logic will be written in this application layer. And over here, let's just right click on this one and choose this add or manage NuGet packages. Click on this browse. Here we have to add a new package. Well, this concept depends based on how you want to implement the logic in your application. If you do not want to use the MediatR pattern and you simply want to work with the repository, then you can directly use these repositories in your controller and you can work. But here we are talking about the clean architecture, and it is always a good practice and recommended practice to use the MediatR pattern. So let's search for MediatR. And remember, earlier we used to go with this package that was having the support of dependency injection, but now you can use this package. The earlier one is deprecated. So this package has everything that is required to work with the MediatR in your application. So let's click on this install button, and we are installing it inside this myapp.application project. So if I save the changes and double click on this project name, then you will notice that we are having this MediatR pattern over here. Now what is the concept of this MediatR? In the MediatR, although there are more functionalities, but if we talk about the operations that are required in this case, then there are 2 ways. One is the commands and second one is the queries. If we are making any change in our database, then we should write the logic in the command, and if we are only just getting the data from the database, then we can write that logic in the queries. So let's create 2 folders over here. One is going to be for commands and another one for the queries. So let's right click, and I'm making these changes in the application project. So let's right click, add new folder. This is going to be commands. Let's add one more folder. This is going to be queries. Alright. So first I will talk about the command because we will have to add a record in the database. So let's right click over here, add a new item, and here I'm writing a name, add employee command. Just hit this add button, and here you will notice that we are having this new class. So in this concept we will have to create 2 classes. One class is this command and another one is going to be the handler class. So let's use this public class, the handler class. So this command class is a very simple class, and there will be only some properties over here. So it is always a better practice to use the record over here, and we don't need these curly braces. So let's use the public here as well, and there we go. Here we will have to inherit this record from this I request employee entity. So what we are doing over here, this I request is coming from this MediatR. If we are using this I request, it means we are telling that this is something we will use for the request, and this request will be handled by this class. Now to work on the add employee concept, what we need the reference of that employee repository. Okay, and here we can use this interface. So let's go back, let's use it as a dependency over here. I'm using this employee repository, and again we have to use some concept from the MediatR, which is going to be this I request handler. So here we are defining this I request handler, and inside this request handler we will have to tell what is the request for this handler, right? So what is the request? The request is this add employee command, and what is the output that this handler should return? This is employee entity, and this is the same output that we have written over here. This input parameter could be different, but this I request object that you have passed over here and this employee entity, these things must be same. Now we are getting one error over here. So let's just right click over here and see what is the error. It is saying that we need to implement this interface. So let's just right click and quick actions, implement the interface. Here you will notice we are having this kind of logic. First we will have to make it async method, and let's use the await keyword. Alright, now by using this employee repository dot add employee async, there we go. So how can we access the data that we need to pass? So this is the request and this is a record. So by using this name, you can get all the properties that are defined inside this record, and this is how we can define the properties of a record, right? So this request dot employee, and we will get this data. Now let's use the return keyword. There we go. So this change is done over here. We don't need anything else. So let's just right click on the namespaces and choose this remove and sort usings. So this is very simple, add employee command. There is something that we are missing so far, which is defining this employee repository in the dependency injection container, and we can define that logic over here inside this infrastructure. So if I add a new line over here, I'm using the services dot add scoped, and let's define this is going to be employee repository, and we will resolve it from the employee repository. Okay, now what things we have done? We have created our infrastructure layer, we have also created our MediatR logic. Now we need to work on the controllers. So if I go to this main application, which is my app.api, you will notice we are having some default controllers. We don't need them, so let's just remove it. We don't need this weather forecast.cs as well. Let's remove it. So this my app.api.http is a new concept from this Visual Studio, and instead of using Swagger or Postman or any other client tool, you can directly hit your APIs from this place. So let's just remove this API as well because we are not using it, and let's focus on our controller. So let's just right click, add a new controller. The name is going to be employee, and here we will have to choose the template. I will focus on this API because we don't need the support of view, and if you are using this MVC controller, although your functionality will work, but this will have the support of views and we don't need the views. So let's click on this API, click on this empty one, click on this add, and let's define the name of our controller, which is going to be employee. So this is our employees controller, and this is the default route that we are having over here. And let's define our first action method over here, which is going to be public async task action method action result add employee async. So this async is just the naming convention that we follow if we are having an async method. Alright, although we are getting the code in the suggestion, but I would like to write it by myself. We are going to return the OK from here. If you are inheriting your class from this controller base, it means this is a special class, and this OK method, this action result, all these things are coming from this controller base. So here we will have to get the data in the body. So from body, I'm getting the data which is going to be employee entity, and let's use the employee. And over here we will have to use the MediatR concept to send this request from this place to the application project, and inside the application I will be using this add employee command. So let's just copy it and go back over here, and here I'm writing this var result is equals to await MediatR.send add employee command. There we go. And what about this MediatR? So this is basically an interface that we can use in our constructor over here. MediatR, right? There we go. But if you will right click on this MediatR and go to this definition, then you will notice that there are two interfaces. This is sender and this is the publisher. Here we are interested in sending the request, not the publishing. So we can directly use this sender. So instead of using this MediatR, I can simply use the sender. So let's update this name as well, and let's just copy it, paste it over here. Now we will have to define the route for this method too. So this is going to be HTTP post, and the route is going to be the default one. So what is the route prefix for this method? It is API, then the employees, and if you are using the REST principles, then that's the perfect route with the post request to add a new employee. And here we can return this result. The build is successful. Let's run this application. So before running this application, make sure that this myapp.api is your startup project. Here you can notice that this application is running and there is only one endpoint that we are having in this Swagger, right? So if I click on this try it out, and that's the ID, so we don't need that because we are setting this ID in our code. So these are some names that I will set. Let's write my name. This is test.com. so this is a test email ID, and talking about the phone number, it is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. All right, now let's put the debugger over here. So first I will put the debugger at this place, and then if I go inside this command, and let's put a debugger at this place too, then one debugger here inside this handler. Okay, then the next debugger at the repository level. So here we are. So this is the debugger, and we will be using this add employee method. So let's use a debugger at this place as well, right? Save all the changes. Here you will notice that if I click on this new query and just run this simple query, which is going to be select star from employee, execute, then you will notice as of now we don't have anything over here. So let's click on this execute button. So here we are getting one error that we are using the MediatR, but we have not added the dependency of this MediatR. Let's do that as well. So how can we add that dependency? So for that, let's simply search about this MediatR, maybe the NuGet. Yeah, spelling is mistake, but there is no problem. Google will take care of this one. So if you will just scroll down a little bit, here you will notice that this is how we can install this MediatR package, and these are two ways to register this MediatR in your application. So let's use this assembly concept because we are registering it inside another class library. So there we go, and let's just stop this execution, and inside our application level, if I click on this dependency injection, then over here let's just use it. And the name of our class this time is this dependency injection. Let's use the dependency injection class over here. So the name that you are using over here, that must be defined over here. We can simply copy this line from this place, right? If you are using it inside your startup class, then you can of course use the startup class or the program class, because there is no startup class in the latest .NET templates. So you can use the program over here, but if you are using it inside another class library, then feel free to write the name of your another class. Now let's run this application again. Alright, let's click on this execute button, and this time you will notice that we are hitting a debugger over here in this controller. Let's see what all values we get inside these employees. You will notice that we are having all the values. So this is the email, we are not providing the ID, which is fine, that's the name, and we are adding the 000 as the phone number, and that's what we are getting. If I click on this continue button, you will notice now we are hitting our command. Click on this continue, you will notice this time we are hitting our handler, and inside this handler in the request dot employee we are having the entire data. Now we will be hitting the repository. So let's click on this continue button, and here you will notice that we are having this add employee async. Let's execute all these things line by line. So as of now you will notice that there is no ID, right? But let's click this line, and this time you can notice that we are having the ID associated with this record. Let's just add it. So as of now you will notice we have added it. There is a change in this DB context, but if you will try to execute your query over here, there is still no record. This record will come once you will just execute this save changes async method. So let's just execute it. Alright, now it is successful, and if I go back to my database, execute this line, you will notice we are having one record at this place. Let's just click on this continue button, and here you will notice that we are getting our output, and this is the response body. Let's quickly add one more record. So here I am using this Nitish 2, and just to avoid the confusion, let's use some 999 as well. There is no validation as of now, so we can pass anything. Execute. This time I will disable all the breakpoints, so I can use this debug and disable all breakpoints. Click on this continue button. We are having this output over here, and these are two records in our database. Now we have to focus on our next operation in the controller. So first we will create the command for update, delete, and we will write two queries to get all the records and to get record by ID. So here we are in the application layer, and this time let's first work on these queries. So let's add a new item, and this is going to be get all employees query, and I will do it quickly. Query to get all the records for the employees. So let's quickly add one more action method in our controller layer. So this is the controller over here. Let's quickly add one more, and this is going to be get all employees async, and this time we don't need anything in the request because we are returning all the records. And this is going to be of HTTP GET. That is all that we need. Let's just test this endpoint as well. So run this application. You can notice that we are having one more endpoint. Let's click on this, try it out, execute. And here you can notice that we are getting two records, and both of them are coming from the database, and these are the exact records that we are having. Now we can create one more action method over here, which is going to be get employee record by ID. Let's quickly do that as well, but before that we will have to set up our query. So let's add one more class over here. And because this time we will have to get one single record based on the ID, so we need one parameter over here. So let's use that public record. So what we are doing, we are using this employee repository, and we are calling the method to get the employee by ID, and here we are passing this ID in the request, and that is all. Let's use the public keyword over here, and this time let's go back to our controller level. There we go. Let's add one more method, get employee by ID, and this time we will add something in the route. So this is going to be employee ID, and I will use that same ID over here. So I can use this attribute which is going to be from route, and let's use the correct query over here, get employee by ID query. Let's pass this employee ID, and that's it. So let's run this application and see how things will work this time. So application is running over here, and this time in the Swagger you will notice we are having one more endpoint. So first let's click on this get all employees to get the ID, because we will be needing the ID over here, and these are the records. So let's use one of the ID. So let's just copy it correctly like this, copy it over here, just paste this ID and click on this execute button. See, we are getting this first record. If you are using the second ID, which is this one, then you will notice we will get the second record. There we go. And if in case we are getting or passing something, maybe something which does not exist, try to execute, you will notice we are not getting anything. So at this place you can add your logic that if there is no record and you want to return 4 of 4, then you can do that as well. So inside your controller, what you can do, you can check this value. If the result is null, then you can return not found from this place, and if it is found, then you can return that particular record. So that is up to you. So here what is happening, the add employee is working fine, get all employees is working fine, and this get single employee by id is also working fine. Now we will have to work on two more endpoints, and which is going to be delete the employee and update the employee. So let's again write two more commands over here, and this time I will be using update employee command. And to update the employee we need two things. One is going to be the employee id, and second one is going to be the employee object. So here what we are having, this employee entity, employee, like this. And this is one change that we can do in all our records, because these are properties, so we can use them in the Pascal case. And let's use that interface, which is going to be I request. Okay, and let's use that repository over here, I employee repository. Let's implement this interface. So right click over here and choose this quick actions, implement the interface. The name must be handler over here. Okay, so what we can do, we can again call the method from our repository, which is going to be await employee repository, update the employee, and let's use the return over here. And let's remove all the extra namespaces, this thing. If I go back to my controller over here, let's add one more method at this place, update employee. This name does not matter, but it is always a good practice that your method should be recognizable by the name. So here we are going to use the put request, and from route we will read the employee id, and from body we will read the data that is required to update this particular record. So this time I'll be using from body employee entity and the employee. Okay, let's use that specific command. So this is update employee command. So employee id and the employee we will have to pass in the body. So two parameters are required. This is the first parameter, which is the employee id, and that's the second parameter, which is employee. Now let's quickly add one more action method for the delete as well. And for the delete I will be using this http delete and delete employee async. This time we only need the employee id, we don't need anything else. And here we need to create one more command, which we will do in just a bit. Okay, let's just copy it and go back to our application layer. So that's the application layer. Here just right click over here, click on this add new item, delete employee command, click on this add button, and we have to update this name as the handler, which is fine. And let's add our record. So public record this name employee id, and we have to inherit it from the I request, and this time the return type is going to be the boolean value. And again here I can use that I employee repository. So let's just right click on this one and implement this interface too. Await employee repository, delete employee async, and let's just return it. There we go. Again we can format all the namespaces because some of them are not required. So if I go back to my employee controller, then you will see we are having the reference of this delete employee async as well. So as of now we have implemented all the CRUD operations. Let's just test them. But there is something that we are doing wrong over here. We already have this employee text over here in this controller name, so there is no need of using this employee text again and again. So let's just remove this one because it is already there in the request prefix, so we don't need it. Alright, now let's just run this application again. This application is working fine on this port. So this time let's just get all the employees. So try it out. you will notice that this is working fine. So let's just update this record, and for that we can use the update API, which is this one. Try it out. So here we have to pass this ID, and then just remove this ID from here, and name, let's say this time I'm using an updated one, and email is going to be Nitish, maybe updated @test.com, and the phone number is going to be, let's say it is 6661111. So before that, let's see what we have in our database. If I execute this query, then you will notice we are having these records. So let's just click on this execute button. Here you will notice we are getting a 200 response, and that's the updated record. If I go back over here and click on this execute button, you will notice we are having the updated data in my SQL server as well. So let's just copy the same ID and just try to use the delete one as well. So if I try it out, put that ID, click on this execute button, and you will notice we are getting the true response body. And here if I just execute it, you will notice we are having only one record. And if I use the get all method, which is this one, click on this execute button, and we should get only one single record. Remember what I told you in the beginning of this video, that this is going to be one of the best video for the ASP.NET Core developers. Well, if you have enjoyed this content so far and you are loving this video, then make sure to subscribe to this channel and like this video. And like always, feel free to ask your questions, suggestions or doubts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.